So, Joe,
Ken.
and you're on that show too.
Nathan.
And I guess we're here to have another extension to our ongoing conversation regarding all things certain and spiritual.
Certain and spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Nathan, anything you want to specifically start on, or? Yeah.
No, maybe it'd be good just for us to map out our positions, because I think we already kind of know our positions, but it'd be easier.
Yeah.
I'd say that I'm an atheist. By that specifically, I mean that there are no good reasons to believe in God, no logical reasons to believe in God. But I'm agnostic about the ontology of that, meaning there could be a God and I could be wrong, whatever, but I don't specifically think that there are any logical reasons. There are no good reasons to believe in God.
Okay. I am a Christian. Just if you want to say it generically, I'm a believer in the Scriptures as the Word of God. That Jesus Christ is the central figure in all of Christianity. Then all who trust in Him and what He has done, we will be with Him forever. Not according to anything that we've earned, but because Christ has done it all for us in His own life, death, burial, and resurrection. So I believe in that. If you want to get really specific, I would consider myself a Baptist. And if you want to get really, really specific, I would consider myself a Reformed Baptist. And if you want information on what I mean by that, you can look to one of the historical confessions of faith that the church has developed over the centuries, specifically the London Baptist Confession of Faith of 1689. I hold that largely, not 100%, but that's a good summary, generally speaking, of why I'm a Baptist, specifically in terms of my theology.
You also are a Calvinist, too.
Well, that falls under being Reformed.
Got it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm a Christian, so I've been following Jesus for the last probably 16 years now, and love telling people about Jesus, and that's part of the reason how Joe and I met, is just through preaching the gospel and telling people about Jesus, about the existence of God, and it's what I'm going to spend my life doing, so I'm excited about that.
Good.
So
Excellent. So, where should we begin? We can ask why we hold our positions. It's always a good point of.
Okay.
So maybe you can tell me a little bit more why you're a Christian and why you hold those beliefs, if you want.
Yeah. You want to start?
go ahead.
I am a Christian. I hold to this because of a work that God did in me to bring about belief and faith in Him. Apart from Him opening my eyes, giving me ears to hear it, giving me a heart to believe, I would not be a Christian. And so the reality of it, that the way Jesus phrased it is that before one can enter the kingdom of God, they must be born again. And that what he meant by that is that it's something that happens to us. It's a work that God does. As the Spirit moves about where He wills, and where He lands, we don't know, but we do see the effects of it, and that comes about in genuine faith that persists throughout the lifetime of the believer, all the way up into eternity with Christ. So, yeah.
Well, I grew up in the church, so I would have considered myself a religious person, but I don't think I was born again. And it wasn't until I heard a sermon by a guy named Ray Comfort that
Ray Comfort.
You've heard Ray?
Oh yeah.
And I was convicted of my sin, and it connected that's why Jesus had to die for me. And He had opened my eyes. I believe that's when I was born again. He had opened my eyes and showed me that I was a sinner and that I needed a Savior. And then after that, I just wanted to follow whatever the Bible said, and so I just began to just study it and see what the early church did, and that's how I wanted to spend my life, is doing what Jesus taught, and so that's kind of the path that I've taken. But
So from what I'm hearing, it seems not so much just like. So a lot of the times when atheists and people want to and Christians want to talk, it seems to be a conversation like an atheist really wants to be about logic or reason. But what I find a lot of the times is that it has nothing to do with that for Christians and for the reasons they believe. It has to do with an experience. Right, an experience of being, like you said, born again, and from your perspective, being born again as well. You know, feeling that. I also had that experience when I was younger. I used to be a very strong Christian. I wouldn't say I was a strong Christian, but about 16 years old, I stopped doing that. I got into Bob Marley and became a Rastafarian. I was a religious Rastafarian for a long time. And then got out of that because I started listening to a guy named Alan Watts who showed a different side of life, the Eastern perspective. Like, because our Christianity is very specifically Western, very specifically our culture. I mean, you talk about ideas of Buddhism and Hinduism and all that. It's just totally a different thing. To call them all religion is really a mistake because, anyway, so he changed my perspective, and then after that I started getting into philosophy and thinking about it a little bit differently and questioning why do I believe what I believe.
Sure.
You know, can I rely on experience? Can I rely on certain things that I've been told I can rely on? And so after, I guess, philosophy, I've found, I don't conclude there is no God, because that's, I think, a mistake. It's the same mistake as saying there is a God, in my opinion, because it's claiming absolute certainty about something you can't know. And so my position is never, oh, I know there's no God. That's not the case. I could be totally wrong, and I'm open to that. So to me, I like to call myself an agnostic atheist. Or I'm an atheist, my position that I don't think there are any good reasons to believe in God, but I could be wrong. Because everything are varying levels of probability, which we can talk about later. So that's just kind of my position. I also see a lot of growing up, because I grew up in the church as well, going to church every day, every Sunday, and all the holidays and stuff.
What kind of church was it?
It was a Bible church, so non-denominational.
Okay.
But really, to be a little bit more specific, my family is very Lutheran. So my whole family is, even today, I'm like one of two atheists in our family, but very Lutheran. So both sides of my family are pastors and missionaries. So my mother was born in Africa and lived there until she was 18, moved over because they were missionaries for 30 years in Liberia. And then my father's father...
Say Liberia?
Liberia.
Wow.
And then my father's father did mission work in New Guinea. I did mission work in Dominican Republic. I had a long line of, my whole family is all about this, and increasingly so,
So that was,
as the years go by.
that mission would have been before 16, maybe?
You know, interestingly, the mission trip was actually after 16. Because I was a Rasta during the time, but I wanted to. It's the same thing with Christianity. I mean,
There's
not even
family
that.
overlap, like you were just...
Well, I was hiding it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an issue when you. I mean, I am certainly not. I won't say that, but there's reasons to not want to come out and say that kind of thing, particularly in a family that's totally Christian. You know?
What would you say happened at 16, though?
Bob
Where
Marley.
Okay.
My parents.
Bob
they would hate me.
Marley, what is his belief on God?
Well, it's another biblical religion. So they believe in the Bible. In fact, if you want to know somebody who knows the Bible inside and out, always go to a Rasta. They'll know the Bible like it's the back of their hand. It's amazing. But they believe that, according to some scripture, we don't have to get into the details, but they believe that God has come again. Jesus came back in 1930.
Yeah.
A guy named Haile Selassie, who's the emperor of Ethiopia. So they believe that the second coming has actually come. And a lot of it was a cultural movement for black people to go back to Africa, a call back to Africa. So Haile Selassie made land for black people who were enslaved, all around in the West, to go back to Africa and live there. They sell this as a religious meaning. There's a lot to do with a guy named Marcus Garvey.
And so you were agreeing with all this stuff that
Yeah.
that he was saying? Huh?
Oh, certainly.
And was there a point where you you rejected that as well.
There was a point, yeah, when I was 21. I remember I had dreadlocks too. I grew my
Oh, wow.
dreadlocks, and I was very devout. I mean, I saw God in everything. There was no mistaking God was real. There was no mistaking in this present moment. And I can see the same thing now that I meant by that. But no, there was a moment where, yeah, I decided to officially say, okay, I cannot call myself a Rastafarian anymore. And so I cut the dreads, and that was that. Became nothing.
And you said there's no God.
I said I have no good reasons to believe in God. And because of that, why would I place faith in something I don't have good reasons for? Now that's a different. Now there's. Before I say that, I don't want you. There's an easy thing to do is to conflate what I just said. That kind of faith. There's two kinds of faiths. Faith, I mean, like faith in an idea, is different than total openness to whatever it is. Faith into whatever it is. I have no idea what it is. Whatever existence is, whatever reality is, that I have faith in. Faith, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. So that's a different thing.
So you have a kind of faith of something being there, not really able to put hands upon it.
Not really like a God. Not really like an extra thing spiritual other than the material world.
Okay.
I mean, I have faith in the way things are. Like totally, like there's a lot of good, obviously, that comes from Christianity. One of them is thy will be done. This attitude of your will be done, not mine. Your will be done. It's an amazing way to live.
That's when we speak to God.
Exactly, I know.
Yeah.
But that attitude of giving up your personal capacity to always want to control the situation, always trying to do something that's, like our inability to let things be themselves. That to me is that's a different subject about how to live well. But that is a big issue for us because we're always trying to control things. So the more we give it up to God, the better things are.
That's the original sin in the garden.
It's the original sin in the garden. Taking.
Did God say? And she decided for herself. Eve decided for herself, and then Adam, he let his wife hook, line, and sinker into it, and that is the sin of that condemned us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I don't believe in that story.
Sure.
Why do you believe in the story?
Well, why do I believe in the story? Well, it is been preserved for us in the inspired Word of God.
Yeah. So, are you guys okay if I take the conversation
Go ahead.
to
Go
kind
ahead.
of the root of it?
I want to push back on some things you said. But
Yeah, I
We'll
was
do
gonna
that first.
go back
Let's do
around.
that first before we go in because
Okay.
I was about to change.
Okay.
the
Well,
subject.
I know we covered this before, but I just want to offer it up again, just for the sake of clarity and for the sake of the conversation. Whatever experience that you had prior to 16, my understanding of the way genuine Christian faith works is that you can't walk away from it if you are in it. What Jesus tells us is that of all that the Father has given him, he will lose none of it. What we're to understand is that we are in the Father's hand, and no one can take us out of it. No one, not there's nothing in all creation that can remove us from the Father's hand.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is because I would have called myself a Christian up until my early 20s before God really saved me, and so when you're young, when you're trying to figure life out, like, are you really a Christian? Am I really a Christian at that young of an age? Yes, you can be. God can save you at at 8 years of age, right? But what do we really believe when we're kids, when we're growing up trying to figure life out?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's I've heard that argument before. So there's two things with that. Me, I can totally grant that I probably wasn't a Christian, and from your definition of what it is, or from your experience of it is, it's fine. I would say, though, I was a devout Rastafarian, though. So the religion I really was involved in was Rastafarianism, and it's difficult to translate that because you're not Rastas.
And you were there for a few years, right?
Yeah, for like 5 years.
Yeah, and just the definition that I put forward. It's not my definition. That's the parameters that the scriptures
That's
give
fine.
us.
I'll grant that. But I guess the way I talk, the way I believe, the way it was absolutely clear God was real. It was not a mistake. I mean, everybody's eyes I look into, obviously, they're a child of God. It's not a question. So, I mean, it's fine. I think what you're saying is more of a belief. And what I want to get at is that we all have an experience of this, which I think is an important experience, mind you, which is why I had the whole meditation thing. But it's very important. But whether or not I was actually a Christian based on the standards that you believe that are in the Bible or not, that's fine.
Well,
But it's
as far as the statement that I believe are in those are the parameters that we have. We're bound by Scripture. As I said, as a Reformed Christian, I would hold to the five solas of the Reformation. Do you understand what those are?
No.
That would be sola scriptura, sola fide, sola gratia, sola Christos, sola Deo Gloria. So the Scriptures are our final, ultimate authority. Sola fide, we are saved by faith alone. Sola gratia, we are saved through grace alone. Sola Christos, through Christ alone. Sola Deo Gloria, for the glory of God alone. And so those solas, they're in that specific order, starting with the Scriptures, because that is what binds all the other teachings.
Yeah.
And so that is am I believing what it says? Yes, but those are I'm believing in parameters that are set for us in the Scriptures.
So, real quick, to go back for a second, another objection to, let's say from what you said, well, if somebody who's an apostate, somebody who was a Christian dropped it or whatever, they could not have actually been a Christian in the first place, no matter what. So is that your claim? So, so people who...
Well, it's the Scriptures claim.
It's from 1 John. It says, those that went out from us were never of us.
Because if
those
they were
who
of us,
went
they
out
were
from
made.
us were never of us. Okay, it's kind of the same
It's
idea
in
in
a
Islam,
British
too.
version.
1 John 2:19.
So they... Oh, okay, so that's interesting. So you believe that everybody who just stops becoming a Christian weren't a Christian in the first place, so they didn't have the they didn't have the experience you had.
Well, they weren't born again. They didn't have the Spirit working in them.
So the requirement to... Okay, they weren't born again. Got it. Understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would just confirm our understanding of what it means to be born again, right? Like, if God saves you, so you're saved by His Spirit, so you don't just give that back. You're made a new creature in Christ, and so you're not going to depart from the faith.
And one of the hallmarks of that is that Christ is Lord of every part of our lives, including He's Lord of our thinking. So we're to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our strength, and all our mind. And so whenever there is a competing thought that would seek to steal our affections for Christ, we submit those to Him.
Okay.
That's not because that's not something that we volitionally just decided to do. That's God working in us.
Yeah, we would call that supernatural.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, from my position and my perspective, that is a very dangerous idea.
Okay.
Wait, what's dangerous?
It's a very dangerous
What
idea. What he just said, the fact that you're saying that God has also control of your mind. So any bad thoughts, any competing thoughts, let's say I give you a logical argument that's interesting, and it may work.
No, I didn't say God controls my thoughts.
No, I know that, but you're saying that He has the capacity to push certain thoughts that would move you away from Him, right?
He
So
has the
like
capacity.
what you said was, didn't you say? And tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
That all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. The mind part is when there's competing thoughts. Like let's say, oh, there's no good reason. Like let's say I'll say something like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I say something, and then you're like, oh, maybe there is no God. Oh, but you have the capacity because you're doing it with all your mind to let that go and stay with God, right?
No, it's not that I let that go. It's that, Lord, here is this competing thought that would seek to doubt you.
Yes. Okay.
it might appear to be compelling, Lord, but I'm going to submit to you instead.
Okay, so then what you're doing there, and why I call it dangerous, is that you're giving up, or you're choosing to let go of reason and logic, or any kind of other idea. Maybe it's a Buddhist idea, maybe it's all other ideas that would possibly take you away from God. You're just going to not
first of all,
do that.
I would say that reason and logic are only possible because we live in God's creation, and He upholds these things.
That's a
for us.
different
and
conversation.
to affirm that God says to love Him with all of our heart, soul, mind and strength.
Yeah.
So we never want to give up logic. We would say logic comes from God. So we want to hold
that's
to logic and reason.
So that's the presupposition position. So you presuppose God first, and because of God, there's logic and reason. So I disagree with that.
Well,
It's not. Nobody believes in that in philosophy, and there's a reason we don't. But that's actually a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
Are you certain of that, though?
Certainly, yeah.
You're certain of your viewpoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, real quick, if we're gonna take the precept route, let me just begin with you ground your. We'll just change subjects then. So whatever, but to finish off real quick, whatever you're saying, the reason I think it's dangerous is because if you teach that to children, telling them, no, only believe in God. No, here's a logical argument that contradicts. Like God is a literal contradiction, particularly the Christian God. Oh well, it's okay. Don't worry about that.
No, we don't worry. It's not that we don't worry about it.
Okay.
No, it's not that we ignore it.
Okay.
It's that
That's what you're saying.
the arguments that come up against God, there's nothing new. There is no new argument to
it's been
stand up
around
against
forever,
God, and they've all been refuted.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll go through some of them.
Okay.
So presupposition. So you want to say, are you certain of your knowledge? You're certain of anything? Truthfully, I'm not certain of anything. So my epistemology is, is how do you know what you know? It's the study of knowledge. How do we know? Right? So you only know, and so the presupposition point of view, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that all knowledge comes from God. You can't know anything without God. You can't know logic without God. You can't have math without God. You can't have physics without God. You can't have anything without God. God is the baseline. Right?
Yeah, where does knowledge come from?
Yeah, so knowledge, from my perspective, begins with the Cartesian, I think, therefore I am, but not really that. I modified a bit. Just the basis of it, and we've had this conversation before, the basis of it is that I am, is what I call I am. There is experience. That is what I can know. That is the one thing I can know. There's nothing, I can't be wrong about it.
It falls short, too, though.
I know, well, how does it?
Well, you're assuming personal identity.
No. So Bertrand Russell, who famously did this, and that Christians always go to, actually mistake Bertrand Russell's argument. He's actually talking about the difference between Cartesian. He wants to reject Cartesian dualism, which is that there's a separation between mind and physicalism, or the material and mind. That these are two separate things, and there's a problem of interaction. That's not what I'm saying. That's what he was rejecting too. He said, "What is this I referring to?" Which is true. So when I say I am, I don't mean literally I am. I can just say that the lights are on. There are consciousness and its contents, and I don't know what I mean by those words, but there's something other than nothing. And as I did last time with you, where I said, well, who were you 1,000 years ago? From the point of view of your experience. It's not even a blank. It's not even there's just a lack of something. There's not even anything. But that's not what's happening now. So no, there's something going on now, and that's the uncertainty. God is an ad hoc reasoning. God is an extra thing to that, because you can't get out of that. It's what they call Cartesian solipsism. So that, to me, is the basis of all knowledge. We have to begin to what we can know. And what we can know is that I exist. I can't even know you exist, or you. But I know that there is experience. It's probably the best way to say it. There is experience. It's the one thing that can be known. That's where we can ground knowledge. So to ground knowledge in God, you have to have all of this stuff. You have to have a book. You have to have a culture. You have to have a story. You have to have a thing. And it doesn't do the work. So that's why we ground it in one certainty, and the one certainty is I am. It's the beginning of epistemology. So when you say, how do you know you're certain of anything? I'm not certain of anything. So to me, it begins with one certainty, I am, or I exist. There's something happening, the lights are on. I don't even know what I mean by I don't know what I mean by exist. I'm not making a claim about either of those. But everything else are varying levels of probability. So the sun will rise tomorrow.
Now you're making another assumption.
Okay, how so?
Well, you're assuming induction again.
I'm assuming
Yes.
induction. I'm not assuming induction.
To make
inducting.
probability calculations, there needs to be induction in place already. Yes.
There needs to be. Hang on. Let me. I
Yeah.
want to understand what you're saying. To make probability
Okay.
things, there needs to be induction.
Okay. Probability is one of the ideas of it is, in the past, we made certain predictions based on the information, and in the past, those predictions they held true based on our observations.
Yes.
So in the past, I understand that was the case.
Yeah.
But that's a question about the past, which is also assuming the validity of memory, the validity of all those things. But
Okay.
what
So yeah, you're right. I'm doing induction. It's not presupposing induction. Induction is a process, not a concept. Right? Well, it's not a philosophical argument. So like when I say the sun will rise tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm basing that on the past, right? And based on the past, I can determine from past things that we already know, or what we've observed, the probability of that happening again. So like I gave the Connor example. So the sun will rise tomorrow, very high probability. Tomorrow the sun will turn purple. It's also possible. Very low probability. So why is that? Why do we think that? Because we determine that from our experience. Now, I'm not certain about any of it though. It could be that the sun turns purple tomorrow. Just like it could be there's an elephant, a yellow elephant outside.
Yeah.
Or I can say there's a black car outside. One of those are more probable. So it doesn't require. The only thing I presuppose is my existence, which I can't be wrong about. And so everything else, like I said, is a level of probability. So
you
even
could
if
be wrong about that.
How could I be wrong? How could I exist and how can I not exist and say I exist?
Oh well, you might be a figment of Ken's imagination.
Doesn't matter. I can be Ken's imagination. I can be a brain in the bat. I can have an evil demon. This is what Descartes talks about. I could be totally wrong about everything. Doesn't matter. There's experience rather than no experience. There's something rather than nothing. There's existence rather than non-existence. That is what is certain. I can be totally wrong about everything else. That's why I call it degrees of probability.
Again, degrees of probability is assuming induction.
I am, but I'm basing that, I'm grounding that in existence. So it's not, you're right, we are, but I do that for different, the reason I do that is different. The reason I do that is because of experience and reason.
Okay, but that's the thing we're trying to argue for then.
So
with induction.
No. You're not arguing for induction. You're arguing for presupposing God.
Well, that's
And you're saying that I
he's
can't
the
do
foundation
that.
of induction.
Well, I'm saying that my foundation isn't, the foundation of my induction is I exist. It's not even, it's kind of a weird thing to say. It's just the beginning point of
So
what
the
we can
fact that
know.
you exist,
Yeah.
you're a created. You're not the creator, right?
I don't know either.
Where
of
did
those.
you come from?
I don't know. I don't know either of those.
So doesn't it assume that if there's a creation, there's a creator?
No,
How so?
because there's no. First off, you don't. So this is an idea you get from the East. You go to the East. They don't think the Earth is created. They don't talk about creation. They talk about growth. They talk about emergence. So kind of like in the same way that a rose comes from a rose bush. It comes from the rose bush. It's not like creation is taking pieces and parts and putting it together into a certain way. Now, an argument against that, you could say, oh, God created it through this process of growth, which is fine. But creation is an ad hoc reasoning. There's no evidence for creation. So I don't even. But
You're
my-
evidence of that there's creation.
No, again, that's more. That's an addition to my point. The only thing I can be certain about is my existence. I don't know if that was a created existence. I don't know if everything was created 5 minutes ago. Could have been created, or everything has been here infinitely. No, we don't. We just don't know. You're assuming.
All right. So there are things you don't know. So then how do you make?
I don't know anything.
How do you figure it all out?
Well, that's the point of epistemology, and that's what I'm writing about. So, you don't know anything. Well, from my perspective, this is just from my worldview. I don't know anything.
Right. So how do you confirm
I only know my
right
existence.
from wrong?
That's a moral question. That's a different
No,
argument.
not necessarily. How do you confirm right from wrong in what you're thinking or what you're believing
or probability. So I base things. So certain things that are really, really good that have worked. Like the reason you have an iPhone is because a particular model of reasoning that has worked over and over again. If it didn't work, we wouldn't have iPhones. So one of those reasonings is novel testable predictions.
And
which
the
is
creator of the iPhone was Steve Jobs. So
creator of the iPhone
right,
was
so
Steve. You asked me. Hang on, you're
So
switching
we have
subjects.
the creation, we have the iPhone, comes into existence, and then it evolves over
Yeah.
different versions.
Yeah.
And we know there's a creator of the iPhone, right? It was Steve Jobs.
Yes. So how does that relate to what we were just talking about? So what you just asked me was,
I'm just comparing the creation and creator. That the iPhone, there's a creator.
yeah.
So with you,
Yeah.
you're a created being. So there has to be a
No,
creator.
you're saying I'm created. It doesn't have to be created. And just
You didn't
because an
just come out
iPhone,
of nowhere.
I could be. I don't think that's the way it happened, but it could be. Energy isn't created or destroyed. It's been here forever, infinite. First law of thermodynamics.
No, but your parents had a son.
Yes.
They called you.
Yes.
I'm blanking on your first name, by the way.
Nathan. Sorry. Yeah.
Right.
It's okay. I'm terrible with names.
So we know the pattern here.
Yeah, but that's a
You
composition.
were created from your
so
parents.
This is what they call in philosophy a composition division fallacy. So you're saying because I see it here, like because Steve Jobs is the creator of the iPhone, your parents are the creator of Ken, and something created this. Therefore, there was a creator of the universe. It's a composition. These are emergent properties.
Just makes sense to me. I'm a simple man.
I know well, I don't know that you're a simple man, but I mean, I understand the pull to do that. My position is it's incorrect. It's bad reasoning, and the reason it's bad reasoning is very important because then we start believing in anything. We can believe in anything. So you can say,
So don't
for
you have to
example,
have a standard to determine if something's bad reasoning or good reasoning?
Yes, and that's logic and reason.
Okay, so how do you know that your logic and reason is valid?
I know it's valid because the conclusion necessarily follows supremacies. That's just the model. But I'm guessing what you mean by that question is how do you know that logic and reason itself is workable, that it actually works?
Yeah, how do you know
How do you
that
know it's
what you're
true?
believing
I don't know
is
it's true. Like I said, I don't know anything.
Right, so doesn't that concern you?
It concerns me a little bit because everything's based on probability. So it only concerns me insofar that
How do you know
tell
everything's
me
based on
there's a
possibility if
purple.
you don't know anything? I mean,
Well, hang on. It's the point of the epistemology. I don't know anything for certain. Now, there's something called fallibilism, which is an idea that you don't need certainty to have knowledge. You just don't. And because and all of science works that way, all of reasoning works that way, history works that way, the reason, like, everything works that way. Every serious academic field works that way. We don't say, oh, I don't know what happened before, so it was probably God. God, there's a creator of a phone,
Okay,
so there must have been a creator of... I know this is straw man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to point out it in a very simple way. I'm not saying that's what you're saying either. I'm really trying to say why we have reason and logic. And that it does work. And the reason I know it works is because of repeatability, and it can make predictions. That's the one key thing you got to know. Any model that can't make a prediction, like it can't predict something we don't know, and then find it out later, it's probably not a good model of thinking. So logic and reason does that. That's why science works. So, like, for example, Einstein made his claim about space-time curvature. That's crazy. That's crazier than a God hypothesis. Time isn't a physical thing. It's a concept. How does time and space bend? Doesn't make any sense. And he said, well, if I'm right, this will happen. You will look at it during an eclipse. We'll see stars bending. We'll see smears, which will be the stars. That means that the light is refracting around the space-time.
I don't know.
And he proved it.
I don't know that time is conceptual. I mean, our recording of it would be conceptual, but it seems to be a component of the universe that bends and molds with the forces of the universe.
Exactly. It's true. That's what I was saying. I'm saying what I said was that it's before this, we thought that's a crazy idea. Like before Einstein, to think time was some sort of thing that could bend doesn't make, that's crazy. But he proved it, and that's why it's reliable. He didn't base it because he felt that it was really true in his heart, or because he had an experience that made him believe.
Strongman again.
I'm not saying this is what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm making a point to differentiate the reason for logic, the reason for reason. If I were to straw man, I would say, well, what you're saying is that you just have a funny feeling and then therefore you believe. And that's not what I'm saying. I know it goes way deeper than that.
So when you speak of laws of logic, are these things that are internal to you in your position, or are they external from you?
The internal. They're not objective in the sense. So laws of logic.
Laws of logic are not objective.
So they're not like an objective reality. They're not so they're not a. They're not like this cup.
Sure.
So.
Well, yeah, I know they're conceptual. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand that.
What do you mean? What do you mean internal?
Well,
What do you mean by
where okay are they these laws of logic that you are accessing?
that? Okay.
Or they're not they're not matter.
Yeah.
They're not composed of anything, any elements in the universe.
Yeah, they're information.
They're conceptual.
They're a language.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just a description. They're not prescriptive. They're just a language, just like English.
Is this a universal language?
No, there's no.
There's not a universal logic.
No, I don't think so. If there is, I haven't looked into
Okay,
it. I disagree with it. If it is.
so someone can be valid in coming up with not a law of non-contradiction, but a law of contradiction. Then someone can posit that and be valid.
Well, it would not be valid because it doesn't follow from. You'd have to. There'd be two things you have to do. You have to see why they believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find out why they believe that,
Mm-hmm.
let's say they have really good evidence, they say they have really good reason to believe that, and they make that claim, then yes, it is valid. And then they would disprove the law of non-contradiction. Now, obviously, it isn't disproved. So.
Because the thing is if you try to contradict it, you validate the law of non-contradiction at that point.
If you
because
try
you
to
can't
contradict it, you can't. Say that again?
If someone tries to posit,
Yes.
if the laws of logic are not objective and universal, and someone decides to posit a law of non-contradiction, the fact that the law of non-contradiction is universal
Yes.
would demonstrate that in order to demonstrate their law of contradiction,
Yes.
they would have to validate the law of non-contradiction. Because
Wouldn't that be invalidating the law? If they're going, because they can't simultaneously. Oh, you're saying
Exactly.
You're saying that the law of
Exactly.
non-contradiction can exist alongside with the law
No,
of contradiction.
if someone tries to posit something other, if someone
Anything
tries
else,
to
okay,
if someone tries to be subjective with it,
Okay.
it would fall apart.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. No. I'll clear that up. Yeah, you're right. Anybody can say anything. You're
Yeah,
right.
and
So-
it would fall apart, and which screams of the
but you're forgetting-
universality of the laws of logic.
Well, I'd agree they're very, very good. To call them universal, I guess I need to know what you mean by universal, but I would agree that
The
somebody
law of
who posits-
non-contradiction.
No. I know what you mean. That cannot be wrong. In
Yeah.
the same way that I say I exist cannot be wrong.
Yeah.
But actually, the law of non-contradiction can be wrong because it's a language. Because we could be mistaken by that. We could find out through quantum physics, which
So
We already
something can
can.
be true and not true at the same time.
yeah, you think of Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat. Cat's dead and alive at the same time. It's a thought experiment.
Well-
and so the point is that it could not be totally universal because it is but very, very high probability. That's my point. Is that everything that we can know can be totally wrong, but
So
there's good reason to ground it in certain things. So there's good reason to ground it in reason, in evidence. So we have evidence. That's the point. That's another key. But I think what you're trying to say that if you don't know anything, then anybody can just say anything.
Well, no,
Or-
I'm speaking of the universality of the laws of logic. And if you're saying they're not, then I can
So
contradict
far.
you for the rest of the conversation, and everything will be perfectly fine and dandy.
No, I'm not saying that that's okay for you to do.
Yeah.
The laws don't need to be universal. So, like I said earlier, based on fallibilism, you don't need certainty to be able to speak. or to be able to have knowledge. In the same way, you don't need the law of non-contradiction or other universalities of logic to be universal in order for that to be the best way to come about reasoning, for that to be the standing model. Now, what I'm suggesting is that there could be in the future or something through reasoning, a new model of logic that, just like we do in science all the time. Before it was Newtonian physics, now it was Einsteinian physics, now we're doing quantum physics. And so it does change and it builds on each other, but it does not mean anybody can say whatever they want and everything's just a free game and there's no way of knowing anything anyway, so therefore you can just say whatever you want. That's not my point, and that's why epistemology that's why I'm writing this thing on epistemology. It's extremely important that it can only begin with that. Everything else is unknown, but we have good reason to believe in what we know. Like, I have good reason to think that my car will turn on, and I have very good reason to believe that my heart will beat its next beat.
What's your good reason?
Yes.
Again, you're positing a standard.
I am positing a standard.
You're defining what good is.
I'm saying that which comports to reality.
That which comports to reality that you have no certainty of.
That I have no certainty of.
That's nothing.
But you're missing the point. Just because I don't...
You see it. That's nothing.
I told you, you don't need certainty for knowledge.
Okay, but you
keep saying...
your foundation keeps... You make this reach, and it slips back to zero again.
How so?
Because you make this reach, of certainty, knowledge, probability, but I can't know anything. It doesn't get you anywhere.
So
your starting point is your ending point. You can't get out of it.
I can't technically get out of it, no. But that's the whole idea of epistemology.
Let's get out of it.
What, and it doesn't. Let me refrain. Again. It doesn't require certainty. So me saying that it's uncertain doesn't mean. So, for example, is the sun going to rise tomorrow?
In God's creation, yes, it is.
Okay. In God's creation, yes, it is. But you don't know that. God can change his mind.
Let me be really technically accurate. From our perspective, as the Earth rotates around its axis, the appearance of the sun over the horizon will happen tomorrow morning.
Okay, good. So, but you don't have certainty about that.
I'm certain of God upholding His promise, upholding His creation.
You don't know God can change His mind.
No, God will not contradict His word.
How do you know that?
Because he's not a man that He should lie.
He's not a man that should lie.
He's not a man that He should lie.
He doesn't have to contradict His word to stop the earth rotating. He could hold it in the sky like He's done in the Bible.
Yeah, but he has done that.
He's held the sun in the sky. So the point is that you don't need certainty. Just because I'm uncertain, and what I mean by uncertain is the difference between the sun will rise tomorrow and Pluto will crash into Earth tomorrow, right? Obviously, one of those you can just say is probably not going to happen. We can just say that. So there's a
spectrum. Faster than light to do that.
But like it or not, this is what we're faced with. You have an idea that we are grounded in a God, which is just ad hoc. It's just a belief, and I don't mean it just like it's a mere belief, but just a belief, meaning that there's no evidence and reason to ground it.
It's okay. You're saying it's just it's a posited position. And that's all it is.
It is.
It's a positive position that must be true. It must
How
necessarily be true.
How must it necessarily be true?
It must necessarily be true because apart from it, there's no foundation. There's no grounding.
I gave you a foundation. I gave you a grounding.
That grounding that you gave, it gets about this far and it snaps back.
No. The grounding. No. Everything that I'm reaching out is knowledge.
Yeah.
It always snaps back to my ground.
Yeah.
Just like you. I mean, like your grounding is God. My grounding is I exist. I have grounding. I have good reasons. So
it exists. That's all. But that's not a grounding.
It is grounding. It's a grounding for knowledge. Tell me why not. You're just saying it's not. Tell me why. What is your reasoning?
Because a fictional character in a story of someone else's dream is not existence.
Oh. Why does that? How is that a contradiction to what I'm saying?
Well,
I'm saying you know you exist.
Well, because I live in God's creation, and He has made me to know these
things. That's extra.
Yeah.
But from the first thing, awake, boom, as a child. You don't know that as a child. You don't know about God's creation as a child. But you know...
The heavens declare the glory of God.
That's okay, but as a child, you could not say those words. You literally couldn't form those concepts, but you knew you were alive.
But the work of the law is written on the hearts of all creation.
Okay. but you see how this is after the fact. My grounding is much more immediate. There's the immediacy of experience in this present moment.
Yeah,
There's as a baby you can't say I'm a child of God. You don't know that. No, you may believe that now as an adult. You're reasoning after the fact. It's post hoc reasoning. But the child also knows what I'm talking about. The dogs know what I'm talking about. Birds know what I'm talking about. Ants presumably know what I'm talking about. It's just existence rather than non-existence. That is the certainty. That is the grounding.
But you don't even know about ants, dogs, or Adam.
No, I'm
You don't know those things.
I know things with very strong certainty. So very strong level. No, sorry, not certainty. Very strong levels of probability. Right. So it's varying. So what I call it is what I'm trying to make clear, which I know it's really. I hope it's not complicated, but it's like, you ever heard of Sam Harris's Moral Landscape? Well, anyway, I'm calling it.
I've heard of Sam Harris.
Okay, well, doesn't matter. It's like
Register Christian Nation, is that him?
No, he's an atheist.
Yeah, but what did he write? Letter to a Christian Nation?
He did write a letter to a Christian nation. Yeah, that's a great book. I don't know, but he has a book called The Moral Landscape, and basically I steal from that and I say that it's a probabilistic landscape. That what we have are varying levels of probability with high peaks and low peaks. So like, there's good reason to not think that when you get sick, it's a demon inside of you. We have good reason now because evidence has shown that. Now you can say, but I'm not certain of any of it. It doesn't matter. I don't need certainty to have knowledge. In fact, all of this technology and everything we have was done on the basis of uncertainty. But it's now, when I say uncertainty, I think that's triggering something for you, where it's like, well, then if it's uncertain, then you can't know anything at all, and that's not true. It's varying levels of probability. We can know things with that amount.
But when you're saying that, I'm just granting you all these positions regarding induction, because a probability is a calculation regarding something that happened in the past that has no indication on whether or not the future is going to be the same way.
Will the sun rise tomorrow?
Will the sun rise tomorrow in God's creation? Yes, it will.
How do you know?
Because God has declared that He will uphold His creation.
Okay, let's say, like, take my steal me in my position for a moment. I don't believe in God. How do I know the sun will rise tomorrow?
You don't believe in God. How do you know? Because
is it unreasonable for me to believe that it will rise
because
tomorrow?
the stamp of God's image is upon you. You cannot deny it, even though you seek to suppress it.
Okay, but that's not really answering the question. So you're saying you're trying to say that.
You see, and so you access things in God's creation like reason, knowledge, logic. You access things that these universal concepts that are conceptual in nature, and yet they're invariant, and they require minds for them to be perceived.
Yes.
And yet these universal concepts, they're not a product of our minds, because all our minds are different. My mind is not the same as your mind. Your mind is not the same as Ken's mind.
How do you know?
Because we process things differently. Are you believing what I believe? And me and Ken, we believe in the centrality of Jesus Christ, but we might not be line for line on theology, but on the main things we're probably pretty close. But the thing is it's a product of a universal mind that God has granted us access to.
What is your evidence? So here's what you're saying, and if I could say it in a way. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying I can't have knowledge because I don't know about God.
No, you do have knowledge.
Okay, I do have knowledge, not because of my grounding, but because of your grounding.
Yes.
Okay, and my evidence for my grounding is my existence. Your evidence for grounding is what? And
there are Christians who would differ with me on this. They would go down your line of thinking. The classicist apologetic position would start with your line of thinking, but they would reason all the way back to God, that your position would only make sense if it necessarily is the case that God exists and that He has made you.
But what is your... I understand their arguments too. What is your argument for saying that I'm wrong? So like I've given you a reason for my grounding. What is your reason for your grounding, other than your belief?
My reason for my grounding...
Like, give me one thing that doesn't require your belief.
Okay, the thing is whether or not my belief is tied into it. I've given you plenty of things. It's the difference of the differences between proof and persuasion. You know, if
Well,
I've given you
persuasion-
things that you're not persuaded by, and that's okay.
No. It's not. But why am I not persuaded?
Well, I would say because you're
sinful
a
nature.
reprobate and you love your sin.
Okay, so how can you prove that that's the case? How do you know that it is because I'm a sinner that I'm not persuaded correctly, or that I have the wrong position? What is your evidence of sin?
What is my evidence of
Sin.
sin?
And that being the reason for me not to understand
Well, you
your perspective.
started out the conversation that I see no good reason to believe in God. That's a sin right there.
Okay, I asked you again. Okay, evidence for sin. What is sin? What is the evidence for sin?
Sin is anything done contrary to what God has prescribed for us, and that
Okay,
and that is,
you're
is
just-
an awareness that He has put in us to know.
Okay, so you have no evidence for it. You just have
No,
your
no,
beliefs.
no,
You're
the
just
fact-
telling me what you believe.
No, again, that is evidence. Whether or not you accept it as evidence, that's or are persuaded by it. That's
Well, that's fine. So maybe you consider that evidence. From my perspective, I don't consider people's beliefs evidence. I don't consider people's antidotes. I
okay.
people's
Well,
stories
it's
evidence.
my beliefs that are grounded in what God has said.
Okay, so again, so you're saying, to go back to epistemology, to how do we know we know? I'm saying I have a good reason to show you what I ground my knowledge in. You're saying, no, you're totally mistaken because you don't understand God because you're living in sin. Now I ask you, okay, what is your evidence for saying that I am living in sin? Oh, because you don't believe in God. Okay, so your evidence for not believing, for me, being living in sin is because of my lack of belief. Again, from my perspective, belief is not evidence. That is not a good reason to do that because anybody can say anything now. I can say I believe the spaghetti monster or
Okay, but that's
Zeus. No, hang on. Let me
Yeah.
make the point. It's not a straw man. I can say that Zeus. I can say a purple elephant is the creator of the universe. Well, I believe it, so there's the evidence.
okay.
So how do
okay.
you? So hang on. So we need a method to
Yes,
differentiate
okay.
what you mean by by
Has,
what Zeus
has
is.
your purple elephant spoken a testimony?
Yes.
And has that been demonstrated to have been spoken from a position outside of time?
Yeah. Actually, I'll go with the spaghetti monster.
Okay. Okay. So
Oh
again,
no, has it been? You said how has it been demonstrated to be spoken outside of time?
outside of time.
No, but I believe it does.
Okay. So that's you believe it. That's based on what?
Based on my book, based on the book of the giant spaghetti monster.
The book of the giant spaghetti.
It has been
monster.
written actually.
Yeah, I know it has.
Yeah.
But the thing
It's
is,
a good point, though.
it was not compiled over a period of 1,500 years and written by men from all walks of life.
Wouldn't that be evidence for it being a discombobulation? Like having people from thousands of years
it might
writing
be
at one
if
point,
it it might be.
a concise like you. It's
It
what we
might
would
be if
expect
it
when we see
wasn't
the
a
Bible.
concise book. If it wasn't a concise, it is a concise book. It is a concise testimony, a consistent testimony.
Okay,
that
so
they
is
give
mine.
to- Huh?
So okay, we're getting off the point. So is mine.
Okay,
so how
but
is
it's-
yours right?
Because
and mine wrong?
this was demonstrated to have been written over a period of 1,500 years from a perspective of someone outside of time.
So was the Purana. Okay, so how about this? I'll switch to a real religion. How about the Bhagavad Gita? I'll talk about the 8,000-year history of the Bhagavad Gita, or of Hinduism, not just the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata. We'll talk about that. Why am I wrong about being a Hindu?
Okay, you keep jumping around to
No,
positions that
I-
you don't hold to. That's number one.
The reason-
You're positing something that you don't hold to reject what I believe.
So this is the reason I'm doing that is to put basically your argument on a white blank wall.
Yeah.
I'm trying to paint it back to you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give you the reason why I. So what I'm trying to point is that
Okay,
the same.
the-
hang on,
okay, go ahead.
please don't cut me off.
Go.
The same reasons you don't believe in certain things is the same reasons I don't believe in certain things. Well, maybe not because you have a very maybe differently, but I'm trying to paint the picture back because I'm trying to show that when you just base yourself in evidence just on belief,
Yeah.
and anybody can say anything. So I'm going to give you an alternative.
that's not what I'm saying.
Well, I know. I'm trying to. This is my argument, not your
Okay.
argument. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. This is
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying that if you just base evidence on belief or that you believe something is true, then I can also say that about anything else.
Yeah.
So there has to. But obviously one of us are right and one of us are wrong.
Exactly.
So or we're both wrong. So we have to have a method into differentiating between which one is right and wrong. So the reason I'm bringing up Hinduism isn't to straw man you, but it's to show you that I can do the same thing with something else, and it's not helpful. It doesn't provide predictions.
Again, if you want to talk about Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita is not an authoritative book. It's a book that the guru can use take or leave as he wills, and he's the authority. And the one guru might come up with his own.
I'm sorry, Joe. I wouldn't go down that line.
No, it's not.
It's not really accurate.
It's not an authoritative text. It's a scripture or an authoritative text.
It depends on which Hindu you talk to. Some of them do think of it's authoritative.
Yeah. Well,
so let's say I'm one of those Hindus who thinks it's authoritative.
But the thing is who's to say at that point?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who's to say?
The scriptures say in our context.
The Bhagavad Gita says.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Here's the problem. The Bhagavad Gita says, and how do I know? Well, because I believe. That's your fundamental. That's
but the thing is okay.
That's
That's a surface level thing. When you actually dig in and look at the beliefs that we are espousing, they comport. They hold together.
So does the Bhagavad. So does
again,
the Mahabharata and the sutras. There's, in fact, we have way more writings than you do, and it's gone way older and longer than you do, than yours.
Yeah.
And so it's been. The argument about 1,500 years is shot to nothing after 8,000 years of tradition. So. You see my point, though? I'm trying to point out. There's nothing to differentiate your belief. I can say anything. Belief isn't evidence.
How do you deal with the problem of sin, though, in your life?
I don't know what sin is.
It's violation of God's law.
I don't believe in God.
Doesn't matter whether you believe in him or not. Have you ever told a lie?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So one lie makes you a lawbreaker.
A lawbreaker.
So,
what law am I breaking?
God's law.
Okay, but I don't believe God's law.
Doesn't matter.
It does matter if you ask me how I deal with it.
It doesn't matter because God is your authority.
How does it not matter if I don't believe in a law that is a law? So it's like I'll make up a new law. There's a new law that you can't put your hand on your chin. You're breaking my law right now. And you say, well, it doesn't matter to me. I'll say it doesn't matter. How is
because
that?
that's
That doesn't
not
make
God's
sense.
law.
But see, you're doing this.
So you're the creation. He's the creator.
Okay.
He commands all people everywhere to repent because they've sinned. And so you can't just say, God, just because I don't believe this doesn't make it true or valid. God laughs. And God says the fool has said in his heart there is no God.
See, I agree with you. Just because I don't believe in God doesn't mean that that's true. You're absolutely right. But I would say also, just because you believe in God doesn't make it true. And this is my whole point.
No, I'm not. It's not my belief that determines the existence of God.
Okay.
It's me in submission to the existence of God.
Okay, so
He's opened my eyes. He's revealed himself to me.
So what do you tell Hindus who say the same thing about Yamunaji? What do you tell? What
I tell the Hindu is Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. That no man can come to God the Father but by Him.
So that's not
that's
sticking
what I tell
to the argument. But that's not sticking to the argument.
That is what I tell the Hindu.
Well, that's fine, but you're not doing reason. You're just kind of saying, well,
you don't get to determine what's reasonable because
yes, I do.
You're not certain about anything.
Well, I do. That's what reason is. Reason's foundation is based in well, I would say it's not. It is based in one certainty, but everything else is uncertain. So I can say that because there's a model of it. Just like I can say that 2 + 2.
Who's determining the model?
We are. It's a language. Man.
A fallible man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sinful
and we fail,
man.
and we fail at it all the time.
Yeah,
that's why it's always changing.
So there's no certainty
man is fallible. So they don't get to determine the model or the method.
Okay, so yeah, we do because we did it, and it is always changing. So like logic changes, science
it's changing. And so man keeps on failing.
Yeah, no, well,
right.
that's what makes us better. So like,
and that's what's wrong in American the culture, is because man is failing.
Can we just stick to one?
No,
thing?
It all comes back to that.
I think
I'm bringing it back.
You're bringing up. Let's just stick to one thing. Yeah, we can talk about culture. We can talk about that thing. Let's just do one thing at a time because it's really difficult to try to like make this like path that you're going.
I'm not making a path. I'm saying this is all coming together. The reason you're believing the way that you are is because you're sinful.
Yeah, and I asked you what's your evidence for sin.
And we gave it to you.
God.
Okay, but what's your evidence for God then?
God determines what is sinful and what's not.
Okay, so this is why I'm just gonna go back through the whole thing again.
Because everything does presuppose.
Let me just speak for a second.
Go ahead.
Okay, I know your point. I understand it very well. So everything presupposes God. You have to presuppose God. Everything you do, you can't do it without God. Logic wouldn't work. You wouldn't exist. Nothing. Right? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure.
God is the source of all knowledge.
God is the source of all knowledge.
Absolutely.
Very good. Now I'm saying, how do you know that?
Because God has revealed himself to us.
Okay, so what do you tell? The reason I brought up a Hindu is,
Sure.
what do you tell a Hindu who says that about their God? Oh, let's not even use Hinduism. Let's say, what do you tell an ancient Greek or somebody today who believes in Zeus and says the same thing you did?
I preach to him what the Bible teaches.
That's fine. Now, I would say that you're incorrect doing that, because what you're doing is, instead of hearing, because now
Who are
there's
you
no
to say
way,
what's incorrect, though?
I am.
Right, but who are you to say what's correct versus incorrect?
I am.
You don't have a moral source.
We're not talking about morality. We're talking about
Sure, it is knowing right from wrong. It's
no. So when I say correct, that does not mean morally good, morally bad. Correct meaning that which comports to reality. So, like if I say there are a group of pigeons who do this behavior and a group of pigeons that do that behavior, or let's just say like they can only do one behavior, but I say there's two behaviors. One of them are right. One of those is right. I'm not saying there's no morality in that. So I think about right and wrong. When I use the word right, I'm not talking in this context. Isn't about morality. It isn't about, which we can get into because I'm also an objective moral. I believe in objective morality, but but this is, I'm just talking about certainty. I'm just talking about truth. I'm just talking about like knowledge, which isn't morality.
Which is that
so
which
it's three
comports
branches
with
of
reality.
philosophy, right? It's three branches of what we can know is ethics, epistemology, and ontology,
Which is that which comports to reality.
which is that which comports to reality.
That's what you saying knowledge is.
Well, I'm just trying to describe
Yeah.
what I mean
And-
when I say right,
right
is
and
what I
wrong,
mean.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5. That's wrong.
And then
2 plus
another
2 equals 4
yeah,
equals that's
another
right. I don't mean it
universal
morally.
concept,
Yeah. So just to be clear, so
Yeah.
what I'm saying is like when in a Hindu, you're saying God has revealed it to me, and I'm like that's great. Every religion has that same conversion experience, and you want to say, and I'm asking you what would you say to them? You say, oh, I'd preach the gospel to them. That's fine, that's what you would actually do, but I'm trying to get you to see that what you're doing is no different, or what you believe is no different than the process that they've taken to do what they've come to their conclusions as well. That's the whole point. I'm trying to mirror it to show you that it is the same thing that they're doing, and you have no way to differentiate it except your own experience and your own belief. And that's the difficulty, is that you're saying, I'm a Christian because I'm a Christian because I'm a Christian in my beliefs. Well, what about this guy in Islam who said he saw Muhammad come to him? Well, I would preach the gospel to him. That's not answering the question. You would say, well, I think they're wrong. You must fundamentally think they're wrong. And my question is, why?
because of what God says.
Because of my belief. So this is the
Because
why.
of what the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has declared.
Okay.
Right.
In your Bible
And
that you believe in.
they're not believing in that God of Abraham.
Oh, they are. So that's the point. You may have a different opinion what belief is. To me, belief is an opinion not based in logic. Or an opinion not based on any evidence. So if you just like believe, I can believe that I am secretly a soul in my body, right? But I cut you up and there's no soul. Well, it's not like that. It's a little different. I believe that it's trans material. Okay. What I mean by that is above material. Okay. Well, it's just my belief. Well, how do we determine it? Oh, we can't. It's just my belief. So the way you speak about it as it is absolute certainty is incorrect. Because you're not
According
different.
to who?
According to logic and reason.
You are the bearer of what is true and right.
No. I'm making an argument for a model that I think is extremely successful. And I'm trying to show how your model is historically unreliable.
Why are you doing that?
Because I think it's important that we know that we come together and reason correctly. Because
why is that important to you?
Because homosexuals today are being thrown off of rooftops.
By Muslims.
Okay, Christian bombs or abortion clinics.
No, they
we can't
don't.
do certain. Yeah, dude. In the 90s, they did. They absolutely did. I can give you the.
Because a Christian would be following the teachings of Jesus, right?
Okay, yeah. So anything
And
Christians do that
Jesus-
are bad are not real Christians.
A Christian, to define what you need to define what a Christian is. A Christian is a little Christ who actually follows and obeys the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
So somebody that is bombing an abortion clinic is obviously
not a Christian.
disobeying
Okay.
Jesus, because Jesus said, "Love your enemies, pray for
Yeah.
those who persecute you."
Well, in other contexts, let's say I'll grant you that. That's fine. Doesn't matter.
Well,
in other.
Well,
hang on,
I
hang
mean,
on.
this is the issue. Is you have certain viewpoints that could be invalid. So I'm just clarifying, as a Christian, this is what a Christian is.
So-
a Christian doesn't throw homosexuals off buildings. A Christian tells the homosexual that what they're doing is sin and that they need a savior.
Yeah,
Why would we want to throw them off a building?
you're right. So let's just say, I'll grant that. That has nothing to do with my argument. So the point is, you're right. Let's say the real Christians don't do that stuff. Fine. You ask for my motivation. Other
Yeah.
people do. Other people do.
Other people what?
They do bad things. They believe that God tells them to do this, and so they kill.
Right, and so
and
they would
hang
need to be
on.
corrected,
Please let me
just
finish
like all
one
of us.
thought. Just gotta let me finish
dialogue.
it.
We're having a dialogue.
Yeah, but cutting me off is not a dialogue.
Yes, it is. We're having
No.
an interaction.
No, I know
and
we are,
that's
but,
okay.
but I can't. I feel like I can't get one line of thinking out because you're just cutting it off right in the middle. You gotta let me speak. So, again, it's just the reasoning style. You're right, particularly. Let's say my special pleading of Christians: don't do this. We don't bomb abortion clinics, even though they said they were Christian. Whatever, we don't do that. We didn't. Real Christians weren't involved in the Crusades. We didn't believe that we should kill all the infidels.
Those Catholics, yeah.
As Catholics who are not Christian either. So it's not about the religion, it's about the reasoning process. So I'm also against things like astrology, people who believe that the position of the stars are of something because of some spiritual thing, or even psychics, or any of these kind of things. It's, to me, a route to bad reasoning. It is something that we've evolved from through logic and reason. So my point in this is it's important to teach children how to think
But this
correctly.
is the problem with that, is that once you've taken God out of the equation, then you can't have solid reasoning to begin with. You can't
showed you
know
how you can.
you can't know what's right or wrong.
Yeah, you can. I think. How?
Well, I've communicated that knowledge comes from God. It has to start
Yeah,
with
but I'm
God.
saying you're wrong. My knowledge starts from
You
existence.
can't say I'm wrong.
I can. I
You
just
don't-
did.
No, you can't.
You have to. You have to give me a reason. So I gave you a reason why I think you're wrong. You haven't given me a reason why you think I'm wrong, except I believe you are wrong. You haven't given me anything. So, like I say, you're wrong because you're talking about mere belief, which isn't substantial. What is substantial is to base all
I'm not
knowledge
talking
into
about mere belief. I'm talking about God.
that's belief.
It doesn't matter what I believe. God exists whether I believe it or not.
But that is a belief because you
No,
can't
it's not.
then demonstrate it. Then demonstrate
It's
it.
what's true.
Demonstrate it. See my point?
I don't
Dem-
need. I mean,
Yes, you do.
number one,
because
I don't
then-
need to. I don't need to prove to you that God exists. God exists whether you believe it or not.
I know.
Now Jesus has declared him by being born and by performing miracles, and then ultimately dying on a cross and rising from the dead. Jesus has declared the existence of God.
So,
So
again,
you're without excuse.
So again, demonstrate it. Give me something other than your belief.
God demonstrated his love towards you, and that while you were yet a sinner, Christ died.
I don't think you're understanding this. So you're right. I hear your beliefs. I know that's what you believe in. That's
That's what
great.
God declared.
Okay, that's
It's
fine.
not what I believe. It is what I believe, but it's
It
what
is.
God declared.
Okay. Demonstrate that God declared that.
It was demonstrated on the cross. That's the demonstration.
Okay.
Why is
so
it that
let's
when
say,
we say things, we have to prove it, but when you make these certain claims, you don't have to back it up.
I do. I have to back up
And you
everything I
can't
say.
back it up because you've taken God out of the equation, who is the source of all knowledge. And
Again,
logic and reason.
we're just going in the circle.
But that's where it goes.
So I have backed it up. I told you that I backed it up. I've showed you good reason why I backed it up. I backed it up in something that is absolutely certain.
You didn't. No,
Yes, I did.
no.
But
You've been
you
saying
have-
all day that you're not certain about anything.
No, I am certain about one thing,
Your existence.
my existence. I'm not certain about anything
You
else.
could be wrong about
and
that.
No, can't.
and the thing is, you can't.
Could be in the Matrix
But
right
you
now.
can't break out of that.
This is okay. So this has been dealt with in the 16th century. Yes, you could be in the Matrix. You could be a mind in a vat. You could be a brain in a vat. This is classic.
Right. So
Descartes.
therefore,
hang on.
you're not certain.
No, you're not certain that you are something. It's no claim about ontology. So ontology is what there actually is. What I am certain about, that there's something rather than nothing. There is experience. That I can't be uncertain about. It could be experience in the Matrix. It could be experience from, I could be completely deluded. I could be a fish in a water thinking and dreaming this whole thing. I could be in a long dream right now. It doesn't matter. One thing is certain that I am, period. There is nothing else. That is the one certainty. It doesn't matter what it is. It's not a claim to what is. It just knows that there is something. I don't know what. That's why it's always uncertain. But we have good reason to believe in what we believe afterwards. So when you say,
And I know you were made in the image of God.
how?
The Bible.
How do you know the
Because
Bible?
God has declared it.
Okay, so again, good. So now we got to the Bible. That's where I was actually trying to go.
Amen.
So
That's
we got
good.
to the Bible. Then how do you know this is true? Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
In the beginning, God.
That's what the Bible
first
says.
verse in the Bible.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you know that? So you're saying, I'm gonna do a straw man, and I don't mean this rudely. So you're saying, this book is true because it says it's true.
All scripture is God breathed.
Okay, so this book is true because I believe it's true.
No, it's not true because I believe it. It's true because it's God's revelation.
Again, I want to point out something that I find a lot. I don't find it much, but I do find it a lot with some Christians, is that you state your beliefs as knowledge. It's God's revelation, okay? So I'm asking you how you know that it's just what it is. It's kind of the attitude. Now, that is bad reasoning. We can't do science that way. You
Says
can't
who?
do
Who says that?
scientists. You can't just scientists would it would
Scientists are fallible, right? So they're imperfect.
not be. You're missing the point. So
No, I'm not missing the point. It gets straight to the point.
you're missing the point because
Is
I'm
that we're
saying
dealing with imperfect people. Some of which are making truth claims
So you
when they
can't-
shouldn't be.